Hey everyone, welcome to this week's edition of Title Scoop. So this week we are talking about life estates. This is a question I've had a lot lately, so I just decided I'd pull together as much information as I could so that I could get it out to you. Now ironically, when I pulled it, I found out there's a lot more on life estates than just one video's worth, so we are going to do at least 2 weeks on life estates just so that you can get all the information that I found. So first thing, we are going to do some definitions. I think today definitions and examples. And then next week, we'll probably go over creation, termination, and then some underwriting issues. So the definition of life estate, which is probably where we should start, is a life estate is an estate in real property, but it's limited in duration. Now, it can either be for the life of the owner of the life estate or the life of someone else designated when that life estate was created. So what that means is if A owns a property and he conveys it to B, but reserves a life estate for himself, his life estate exists as long as A is alive. Now, if A owns a property, he conveys it to B, reserves a life estate for himself for as long as C shall live, then that life estate only exists as long as C is alive, even if A would happen to outlive C. So let's go into a couple other words. I think I've got 3 or 4 that would be helpful just in case they come up when you have a life estate question. So life tenant is the first one, and that's a good one to know because that is on every single life estate. We do have a life tenant. And that is because a life tenant is the person holding the estate in the real property for the term of the life tenant's life or someone else's life. So in our example above, A owned the property, conveyed it to B, reserved a life estate for himself. He is in fact the life tenant. Now reversion is one, again, you're going to hear, and that's the portion of the whole estate continuing in the owner after the owner has conveyed the life estate. So again, what's that mean? Let's say A owns the property. A conveys a life estate only to B. The residue of that fee estate is left in A, and that's called a reversion. So when B's life estate ends, the possession, the right of possession, I should say, will revert to A. So that's why it's a reversion. So A is actually a grantor and an owner, right? But also a reversioner. Now remainder is another term you're going to potentially hear. And a remainder is a fee estate created in some person other than the grantor and limited to take effect in possession after the expiration of the life estate. So what does that mean? So A, again, owns this property. He conveys a life estate only to B, but the remainder to C. So C's fee estate is the remainder. C is also called the remainder man, okay? So when B dies, his life estate terminates and then the right of possession vests in C. So a term you may not hear, but again, this is one you may see and you may just not know. It's called life estate per autre vie. Again, don't know if I pronounced that right, but this is when the life estate is measured by the duration of a person or persons other than the holder of the life estate. So we've actually used this example already, but let's say A owns a property. He conveys a life estate to B for so long as C shall live, okay? So at C's death, then it reverts to A. So does that make sense? Hopefully. If you guys have questions, definitely reach out because these can be really confusing. So last thing today, just want to cover is that sometimes it's confusing is a life estate is not inheritance. We sometimes have people get a little confused. They think if their mom held a life estate, then they inherit the property, and that is not the case. It's actually a freehold estate in the land, so it does not survive the death of the person whose lifespan it measures. So remember, upon termination, most of the time that's going to be death, but there are other ways, and we're going to talk about that next week. The holder of the fee simple will either be a remainder or reversion, not the heirs of the prior life estate holder. So when that life estate exists, remainder and reversion hold a future interest in the land. Okay, so that is it for this week. That's a lot of terminology, and we will again next week go into creation, termination, and then some underwriting issues. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we will see you next week.